This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
If you can remove your mask. Welcome everyone to our November meeting. In accordance with CDC guidelines, as we move around the room, we will wear masks. Other than that, we are socially distanced, 3 on the podium and several throughout the room, so we can conduct the meeting a little bit clearer. The meeting is broadcast on North Haven TV. It is on the access channels for Town Network as well, and you can dial in, and it is posted on the town website, the numbers to use. You also can have public comment and send it to the email address, and members will review any comments that came in. Having said that, our first order of business, minutes from our regular meeting, October 21st. Everyone's had a chance to look at and review it. Any questions or comments? Motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Old business, we don't have any, but I just interject a few things, bring everyone up to date. Alex is going to provide us with a little IT service on our workshops. We will maintain a maximum 10 people in this room in accordance with the governor's mandates. Having said that, the presentations will come in under Zoom. We'll see it on our monitors. We'll be able to interact with them that way, and we'll keep the body count down in this room. Also, just as a point of information, there was some public comment Ms. White made. You have it in your packet. I addressed some of her questions, tried to give her an overview as to what it was. Again, it's public comment, not really question and answer, but I tried to alleviate some of her, or try to provide some insight into what she was looking for. New business. Expenditures.
I got one comment. It's on page 4. I'd just like to have clarification on the vehicle maintenance and repair. It's been creeping since July, and I'd just like to know if we're throwing good money at an old vehicle. What is this? Would we be advised to lease a car or a truck or whatever where the vehicle is?
The line that's 2,500, budgeted for 2,500?
Yes.
Yeah, I really didn't analyze that account because it's so small, but it might just be some reimbursements too, because 1 or 2 people also use their own vehicle.
Okay.
So it could be one repair, for 2,700, and some reimbursements to some employees who are using their vehicle.
Okay. Thank you.
Because there's actually, I think, 2 or 3 inspectors out there,
So they're using their own vehicle.
well, I think one of them might.
All right. So, but does the department have a vehicle?
Yes, we do, too. And if they're available, they use them first. Unless they're all out at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else on expenditures?
I just had a quick question on page 4 again about public libraries. It seems as though we've had some building maintenance and repairs and other maintenance of equipment that seems to be a little bit on the high side, and I'm just wondering, is there something that we should be aware of?
Well, I think the big issue is the boiler. That's one of the things we're working on with the steep grant. As soon as that gets going, we'll use that money to fix it, repair it, or replace it rather.
So the 2 boilers finally just keeled over, right?
Well,
And so-
they're about to. So what we're trying to do is just make our way till we got the grant. We got the grant, so we're going
Yes.
to move forward with that.
So first of all, I'd just like to compliment, Mr. Frieda and of course, Lynn Sadowski and Ed and Sue Griffiths for winning this award for the STEEP grant for the library. I guess it was like $117,000 specifically for the heating system.
Right.
And we knew from the presentation last year that these boilers were really on the brink of keeling over. So particularly since they weren't actually in this current budget.
That's right.
It's really great that we were able to get the STEEP grant and
But coming back to your question, Nancy,
Yes.
what we had to make an accommodation for was to, for lack of a better way to describe it, rent a boiler temporarily.
that's what I assumed, right.
And that is about $5,000 to $6,000 a month.
Right.
Right.
And here's the inside baseball to this, if you will. So we weren't sure if we were going to get the STEEP grant. So we were tracking that. I was even involved with OPM on this. And we had to make a decision whether we rent the boiler to keep the library operational from a heat standpoint. And Ed and I made a decision that we'd make a 2-month commitment rather than a 1-month commitment, because we weren't sure where we were going to get that grant. So that is a large part of, I think, what we're seeing on these expenses.
Right, yep.
Right. So, but the good news is that'll go away, and then we'll have that money to replace the boiler.
I know there are several administrative hoops to actually get the money and ultimately put it out to bid and so forth. Do we have a rough idea of timing on this?
Ed,
I'm hoping within the next month, because with grants, you can't start any work until everything's approved. So I think it still has to go to the Board of Selectmen
Yes.
for a final approval. And then once that is done, then we could get it and start.
Oh, it is, okay.
They won't
so
let us
that's the
start
other
ahead of
thing.
time.
Okay,
Yes, they
I
can't.
assumed it
We
had to go
tried,
back
but
to
they
the
won't let
state
us.
for something.
no, but see, Nancy, that's a
Yeah.
good question, because
Yeah.
that's why we committed to the second month.
Yeah.
We knew there was going to be a little bit of a delay in it,
Exactly.
so.
Right. And again, I think that it's worth pointing out that even once we get this put in place, it's not really saving the taxpayers any money because it wasn't in the grant, but it will definitely save the taxpayers money in terms of future efficiency
That's right.
and electrical bills, or
Yes.
utility bills. And that, I'm really glad that Governor Lamont came through with the state funding for
Yes.
at least $11 million, which, again, I think the thought was smaller amounts of grants, but it went out to 94 towns.
That's
you know,
right.
So I think this is great.
Exactly right.
Okay, so that was my question.
So that's a permanent solution then for the library?
For that boiler, yes.
Yeah,
the
for
Yes.
that boiler.
Yep.
So the baseball analogy would be, instead of pitching by committee, you brought in a starter that in a long-term contract.
And we brought in a Mariano Rivera closer to close it out, so.
Yeah, we'll see what brand you actually purchase. but
Okay, all right.
Anything else on expenditures?
I guess in general, it's, we knew this last month, but we're running high. We're about 6% high. On some of that, it's hard to say because some of these expenses get paid, at
Yes.
different times during the year. Like, for instance, well, an example would be a bond payment. But I think we all know, and maybe I'm just repeating what I said last month, is that, you got a lot of categories here that a lot of them are COVID-related that are running high. And Ed and Mike, I don't know if
COVID
you
and
want...
storm.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, sure,
I don't
so.
know if you want to comment on what we're doing to mitigate that.
Yeah, so what we're going to see here, and you see it to a certain extent in October, these are through October's numbers, ladies and gentlemen watching on TV. And then November, we're going to see another spike. And that spike on some of the expense lines will be because of the massive amount of debris that we picked up. And that is going to be reflected in probably the November's reports. So we're watching this very closely, Ed and I, in terms of the over expenditures by line. We have a plan in terms of how we're going to ameliorate that. And from there, we're just going to have to keep watching these line items. At this point, there is no COVID-related expenses coming in, nor is there any FEMA-related expenses coming in. Now, before this meeting, I was on a call with all the chief elected officials and the governor's staff, and although the state may reapply for either COVID or FEMA, we don't know if we're going to get it yet. Now, we haven't budgeted any revenue for any of the reimbursements either, like some municipalities have. But if we get it, that'll be one-time revenues to help offset these one-time expenses.
Yeah, a couple questions.
Sure.
We may have spoken about it in a previous meeting, just the equipment rental on page 13 for streets and roads, an encumbrance of 220, is that for some machine that we're going to definitely have to use for the rest of the year?
That's trucking probably, that moves the debris.
13, it's the third one down.
Page 13, about the third item down.
Mostly trucking?
Normally that's budgeted for picking up leaves, but we also use it to pick up the debris.
Oh,
Trucks.
okay. All right.
We have outside vendors that supply
Right.
little big tent poles.
All right, so that
debris.
220 there, that would put us, if we indeed have to pay out the whole bit, would put us 103,000 over on that line. That would be a recoverable storm.
No,
No.
that's the problem. Right now, the state and FEMA are not reimbursing, or the town's not expecting any major reimbursement for FEMA or the tornado.
But it was declared a tornado. It was declared.
Yes.
So let me explain. So Connecticut did not qualify for Congress to declare a federal disaster. There are thresholds, aggregate dollars and number of incidents. So although this region was battered, when you added up the aggregate values of losses and claims did not meet the threshold. So right now, we're not getting any FEMA-related reimbursements. I do think, based on the call we had this afternoon, that we may see some COVID-related reimbursements, but it's undetermined right now as to how much and what percentage of what we submitted earlier in the year.
But we're absorbing the storm damages now.
Yes. And so everyone knows the storm damages are not only the labor and overtime of what we did on a house-by-house basis and on a street-by-street basis. And sometimes we went back 2 and 3 times to these streets. One house, as an example, took 7 hours for our people because there was so much debris. That's one portion of the expenses. The other portion is that when we bring it back to our facility on Powder Meadow Road, and once that gets filled up, we have to pay to have someone come in and take it out. So there's a front-end expense of labor, overtime, equipment, outside contractors, and then the removal costs of getting it out, because you have to get it out so you can put more in. And
And they have to grind it.
they have to
down.
grind it, right.
Wait, so the tornado, the previous tornado,
The storm-
2 or 3
the
years
storm-
ago, that hit the west side of town, hit Scrub Oak.
Yes.
Did we get any reimbursement for that?
I believe.
I think we did. We got a little bit of reimbursement from FEMA back in 2017.
Right.
But that was
But-
more widespread in
More
the state.
widespread.
The key is the coverage area has to be large enough for them to declare it.
Right.
If it's too small, they don't declare anything.
Yeah.
So-
I thought once that the storm was, that we were eligible somehow for a pool of money for more limited scope disasters.
Well, I can tell you, in speaking with our congressional district office, we didn't qualify.
And so the tropical storm in August also was not big enough.
Not big enough,
I thought that ravaged a lot of towns.
right? So we didn't meet the threshold, so. But I'm optimistic on some sort of COVID reimbursement from earlier in the year when the pandemic hit on or about March 9th. Ed and I were tracking the expenses. We submitted our expenses. Originally, we said, they started to back out eligible reimbursements. And we were whittled down to basically nothing.
Right. Frontline expenses, basically.
Exactly. So as an example, just to clearly illustrate, see these hand sanitizers here? All the disinfectant of the buildings, all of the replacement for the hand sanitizers, all of the COVID-related expenses that we put in, Ed and I invested to make sure that the employees and the citizens were safe when they walked into these buildings. We submitted that as a reimbursable expense. We're not getting reimbursed for it.
How about on the Board of Education side?
Same thing, you know.
Really?
Yeah, the same thing. You know,
Okay.
They would fall categorically under the non-reimbursement schedule also.
Okay.
Hey, can I just ask too, on page 18, there's credit for the principal bonds for 367. What was that?
Oh, it was probably one item that probably should have been an interest in it. I had it under principal, that's all, just a reclass.
So you think it was a reclass down below to the account right below it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, does the threshold from FEMA change from tornado to hurricane to, destruction?
I think it does, and I think there's some sort of inflationary percentage in there, Jim. And then, again, there's an aggregate dollar amount, that's one threshold, and the number of incidents, or municipalities, let's say, and the incidents within the municipalities. And that's kind of where it's at. And by the way, even if we qualified, it would be well into the next fiscal year where we would get reimbursed, because that's how phlegmatic the process is for FEMA.
A late check is still a check, but okay.
But, so, that's kind of where we're at. Now, could it change? Maybe. But right now, we can't forecast anything because we have no indication we're going to get anything.
I just had a quick question about capital expenditure on page 18, and this is for Ed.
Yeah.
The fire department generator, it's budgeted at $45,000, and it seems like in this past month, we spent $4,000, so, and we have an encumbrance for another $41,000. So what was the $4,000?
It might have been
It might have just
staging.
that, yeah.
It might have been staging for it.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that item actually went over and had to charge part of it was repairs and maintenance. So the total for the generators went over 45,000 by a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So the difference had to go to his line, but I'm not sure off the top of my head why we paid $4,050 up front.
Yeah.
Well, it could be, with the staging aspect of it, there's foundations and concrete that have to be laid sometimes, so that could be what it is, but we'll check that out, okay?
Okay, I just wondered. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anything else on expenditures? Revenue?
I just had a comment that I'd just like to make on page 1 regarding the tax revenue. The very first line, current taxes, it seems as though we collected about $4.2 million in October. And if we look back to the same statement from last month, we collected about $6.5 million. And the only reason that this is relevant is, again, for the purposes of understanding the impact of the tax deferral program. And just to remind everybody, back in April, the Board of Selectmen voted on an recommended executive order from the governor to actually offer the people of North Haven an extension of their tax due date from July 1st to October 1st. And so what that really means is all taxes on both real estate, public personal property, and automobile taxes have to be paid by October 1st. And it seems as though the fact that we have $4.2 million in October, it seems as though there were at least some people that misinterpreted that particular deadline. And I happened to speak with the town clerk today, and I asked her for a breakdown of how many people actually paid on October 1st, which would still be under the limit and on time, and how many people paid the rest of the month. And it seems as though the breakdown was about 3/4 paid on October 1st. Now, of course, we still have all those people that paid in September as well. And then another quarter paid afterwards. And those people that paid from October 2nd on throughout the rest of the month, of course, they incur interest payments. And so we collected another $51,000 in interest payments. So I only call this to everyone's attention because if we have to be in this situation again, and hopefully we won't, perhaps we need to do something different in terms of just explaining exactly the implications of that particular grace period and what's a real deadline. Because I think a lot of people thought they had the entire month of October to pay these bills.
Well, all right. I mean, I think that I can flash back to one of our Board of Selectmen meetings.
That was kind of clear.
And we were, and even Sally Bowen was very clear on it. She took the
Absolutely.
time to explain it.
Yeah.
And, see, I look at this and I look at the larger aspect of this. We got to be careful of that, I agree. But we got through 2 payrolls and 2 major debt services when the people paid the taxes in July. So we didn't have to take any tax anticipation
That's
notice.
great.
So I give the residents of North Haven a lot of credit for, even though we extended it till that date, we got a lot of revenue that came in July, which took us through. And as Ed knows, and Ed and I talked about this many times, that first payroll included the HSA payment for insurance. And that was a large payroll. We got through that and the 2 large debt payments.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but we'll have to take a look at it, and, hopefully we don't go through it again.
Yeah,
So-
I think Stacy's done a great job, and I've read all of the notifications that she's put out there, and to me, they're very clear, but it just seems as though there were a fair number of people that, misinterpreted and really thought that the grace period meant that they had the entire month of October. So I think it's just worth keeping in mind.
All right.
That's all.
Okay.
Anything else on revenue? Special
Yeah,
funds?
no,
Yes,
on the,
revenue?
well, just a note here that a portion of the ECS grant came in, and the pilot program, that was fully funded to the dollar.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah.
That never happens.
I
never-
It's always
I-
short, a little over.
I couldn't
Yeah.
believe
Right
it.
on, right on spot.
We had a little bit of, we were so happy when we got that check in. So, right to the cent.
Never happens.
I've never seen that before. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was just a number that was carried over one too many columns.
You good, Michael?
Yes.
Special funds.
I just wanted just some clarification from Ed about the BOE capital improvement new line item. And you have an asterisk that we have basically a deposit into that fund
Yeah.
from the state ESSER funds, and then we expended some of that money as well?
Right, in order to get reimbursed on that grant, they had to spend the money, and the money
Yes.
came out of there. So when they got the grant, I just put it, that's where they wanted it put. That's where they charged it, they took it out of there, and that's where it goes back to. In other words, they didn't need that fund, they just needed somewhere to put it.
I
I could
see.
have put it anywhere.
Okay, that's
Right.
sort of my
So
question.
it came in
is
and went out.
It didn't have a home?
No.
I see, okay, that's clear.
I just have two questions, just out of curiosity on this. The rec department always seems to carry a large balance, and I think that they have larger expenses, during the summer or something?
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're paid in advance.
right. What are some of the expenses that are paid out of that account? What do they use that for?
Payroll, the cost of any brochures, anything they need for their programs, plus most of it's staffing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of
Just to
part-time
pay for
people.
just to pay for the program itself,
Things like lifeguards and so forth, or?
everything.
But you have counselors at the.
Camp
at the
counselors.
different
Yeah.
schools and-
Right. Camp counselors too, yes.
Okay, and the same question with the library. Are they free to use those funds as they wish? Because right now they have, in that account is sitting 55,000. And are they in need of anything that we haven't budgeted for?
Well, they just asked for an update on all their endowments, and so I've given them that information, and they're using a lot of that money as well. So if they need it, they could use some of it, but
But there are, if it's, there's a lot, some of those come with restrictions as to how it can be used.
all the endowments do,
All the
all the
endowments have
trust funds, yes. They're specific.
But Ed, in the case of the library, for instance, in this month, October, the revenue was $177. What is the general source of the special funds for the library?
I want to say various book fees and other things that come in
So this 55,000 has to be from
years ago.
years ago, right? And then maybe something happened, but, because on a month-in, month-out basis, this account's relatively small.
Right.
Yeah, the endowments, I remember we went through the endowments years back. There was really some tight restrictions on how that money ever could get spent.
Oh, each endowment's different. They can only be spent based on the letter or any information we got from the person who donated the money,
Yeah,
or whatever came from the will, and that's it. And generally, it's not you can only spend the excess, not the corpus,
yes,
so.
yeah.
In other words, if you have 50,000 and it earns a few dollars in interest,
You can only spend a
many
few
times just
dollars.
all you can spend is the interest, so they can't spend a lot. but there's a big number, large dollar amount in the account.
Yeah, so those endowments, though, are, they're not included in this fund
Not at
balance
all,
here?
no.
No.
There's probably about 15 or 20 of them.
So do they have restrictions on what this fund balance can be used for, the special fund that's?
This-
None of these are restricted, right?
Not these, no,
Yeah.
they could probably do what they want.
Yeah,
But the 15 or 20 that are in the trust and agency funds, those are very restrictive.
okay. Thank you for that education.
Board of Ed?
I just had one quick comment about the busing contract that was provided to us. It makes reference to a Schedule A, but that's not included. And I was wondering if we could get a copy of that. Which I think it actually, Schedule A must include the list of the daily rates.
Discussing the bus contract now?
We got some tonight, didn't we?
Yeah, I agree to that. I looked for they gave us daily or weekly rates for the vans and the small buses, but not.
Special education,
Yeah, but not the big buses.
But not the big buses.
I was looking for
right.
what we're
And
paying
that's-
for.
And that's the main point, is
Yeah.
that they're getting 90%
I agree.
of their rate,
I agree with you, Nancy.
even when they're not running. So I
Yeah.
don't know who signed this contract, but I want to get on the other end of this.
Actually,
Well, wait,
a lot of
that-
it comes
the
to
90%.
Lamont made that deal,
Yeah.
and the state funds a lot of that dollars.
Really?
And that was back when the executive orders went into place.
Mm-hmm.
Bus contracts, the buses still got paid without running.
And our Board of Ed, working within that framework, worked to renegotiate the contract, but were marginalized on their ability to do it. So they negotiated rate reductions on fuel
Fuel.
and some other things, but not the drivers and not the general contract. So it really came from the state, to
Yeah,
your
it's a-
point.
Right.
The town was in a position not to pay anything, I pretty much think. But because of the governor's executive order, we were locked in and we had to pay personnel. Or and the bus company had to pay personnel.
Is that because of the COVID?
Yep,
Yeah, it's
So
also.
what happens when the vaccine comes out and COVID goes away? Does that,
buses are running
The
again.
buses run.
Right.
Run.
but does that clause stay in this contract for whatever, they still get paid 90%? Or will that be falling,
I, to
fall
tell you the
out?
truth, I did not read this contract, I read the previous contract. Unless the state overrides, the town's contracts are pretty well-written and protect the town for situations like that. And we were protected for the COVID situation, based on the way our contract was worded. But the state kind of overrode it with an executive order. And again, since a good chunk of that money comes from transportation from the state, they fund it to us, correct, Ed? A good chunk of dollars comes on transportation from the state. We're kind of committed to keep it going there.
And there's an inherent reason why, and this is what happened at a state level, that the bus companies presented that if those expenses were taken out, they could potentially lose drivers to companies like Amazon and FedEx, and then when school returned, there would be a crippling of the transportation because the bus companies presented that it would be difficult to fill drivers if they left for more secure employment. So that was part of what happened earlier on, to
That
Richard's
does
point.
that makes sense. It does make sense. Yeah. I had a question on the contract too, but are
Please
are
go
you
ahead.
finished?
No, you're fine.
Well, it's pretty much, it's the same content here. On page 25 of the contract, I don't know if there's two typos or what, or not, where it, in paragraph 2 and paragraph 3, it cites 50% and then in parentheses has 90%. So I'm not sure
I read that.
Yeah.
which number
I did not understand that.
which number applies there. But the bigger question is that if it is 50%, the paragraph before it, paragraph D, seems to say that if there's less than 180 school days, we compensate the contractor for 180 days of service. So C and E and F cover the idea of what happens if school is canceled. And if school is canceled, it seems like they're going to get paid in full anyway for what would end up being a day that may not occur, that may not be replaced. So I'm just, I'm not asking.
You're reading the, I just read E, you're reading it incorrectly.
Okay.
The 50 and 90 are correct numbers. Basically, it's saying the parties agree that during a period which the hybrid model is in place, the board shall pay the contractor in accordance with the contract for the days per week which transportation are provided, prorated for any partial weeks, and shall pay a maximum of 50%. So 50%, 90% of the contract amount, but no more, never more than 90% of the contract amount. It's a combination, it's like an upper and lower limit. The 50 and 90 are showing limits of reimbursement once you're in that hybrid mode.
All right, well, after the meeting's over, you can explain it to me a little further.
That's all I do. In reality, all I do is read contracts all day long. Get used to it.
It seems vague to me.
It's vague, but it's legalese.
I'm not sure I remember all integral calculus, but I'll try to get my book out. This might have been differential.
Anything else on Board of Ed?
So this contract has not been signed yet. It's still in negotiation, correct?
No, this is
No
the first,
sign.
this is the first year, isn't it?
They're
It is
signed by
signed.
Anita.
It's signed, we just got a copy of the unsigned version.
Right.
Okay. So can we have Schedule A circulated, please, Ann?
Yes, that would be great. Terrific.
I'm Board of Ed, and I see we had a few questions answered by the business manager there.
For informational purposes.
Yeah, it's just, the only obvious question I think we've asked before is if they believe that the hospital insurance, that if the insurance line is budgeted properly, why isn't the whole thing encumbered? Why is there still 1.265 million remaining in the balance there? And this is what, I think Tim asked this at a previous meeting. So just to repeat, that's the question I would like the business manager to answer. Either encumber the whole thing or don't do the encumbrances, but what is this partial encumbrance all about?
Okay.
That's all, that's it.
We meet with them regularly, and we'll ask that question.
Okay.
Are we good with Board of Ed? Have a motion to accept the reports as presented.
I make that motion.
Second,
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
The only other thing I would like to say is that also included was, since the fire chief's not in here, we would exceed our numbers. You have some information that shows their agreement that they did with Nelson.
Right.
Read it at your leisure. We can address it in the workshop with the chief. I mean, the gist of it is basically it just, the town's never has paid AMR, Nelson, any ambulance company for service. Once the town took over the PSAR, what we did had the ability to determine who was transporter in town. Having that ability gave them the ability to put certain requirements on it. Number of units in town, how it's staffed, and the response times. And the contract sets penalties, shall we say, that's a bad word to use, but sets requirements if they don't meet those obligations at least 90% of the time. And there's ways of adjudicating any problems. The town could, if they're in breach of the agreement, the town could just change to someone else. That was the advantage of getting the PSAR. That's kind of what that agreement does. We can go into more detail with the chief. I'm not quite sure how, did it come out of finance or it came out of fire department, the RFI for how it was solicited? It came from them, okay. We'll find out more as to how they solicited the bids. How did they?
Yeah, well, we worked with the town attorney, Jeff D'Onofrio, on that to present that out there. And the decision was made to go to Nelcon, so. But
Okay, there was a few people that responded to it, or?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think
Okay.
there was.
Were the three companies, did Hunters respond? Because I assume AMR
Right.
did.
Yeah, I don't think Hunters did. We'll double check it, but.
It may be, sometimes they don't like the idea of the requirements that, you know, when you tell them they have to respond within, I think one of them is, was it 7 minutes? 6 minutes, 59 seconds, you
Yeah.
have to, 90% of your calls, level 1 calls have to respond to in that time frame. Some companies may not want to commit the resources to do that. They could make other dollars other places.
So then Nelcon was the only option?
I don't
then?
know, I don't know.
Okay.
We'll talk to the chief at the
Yeah.
workshop, I guess.
We had the option, according to the town attorney, to select a carrier.
Nelson.
But I don't know if anyone else really applied, to be honest with you, so. But I can tell you this, I spoke directly to the owner after the fact, Mr. Sal Khan. And he said, Mr. Frieda, I will never, ever let the town of North Haven down. We look at this is our town, we do business here, and we will do everything we can to ensure that we never let you down. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, I think part of the requirements is there has to be, one of the units has to have a paramedic on it, and I know response times are other parts of it, though.
If you look at
Okay.
page 5, when you get a chance, look at page 5 of that contract. I signed that contract. You know, it says clearly there's no cost to the town, so.
Yeah. And the town, again, if they don't fulfill the requirements the town has
Well,
the
you know,
ability to
when we
move it
get the,
someplace
when we
else.
get the chief here, the question's not so much what, you know, what would it cost us? It's what would it either, mostly save us in terms of resources, manpower and so forth, and when we might not have to run 2 ambulances, or you know, our town medical
Right.
truck to the same scene.
Chief Pauls will be prepared to address all those issues.
Right, and so now, if we weren't restricted to 10 people, he was going to be here
Yeah.
tonight?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
why couldn't we have him present on the screen
No,
just
I
the same way that
didn't-
they would for the workshop?
Well, he was available, but we made
No,
the
I asked
call.
just for his contract.
Right. So.
Okay? Because I think that this is going to take up a fair
It's a
amount of
Saturday.
time. No, but I
His
think
meeting-
it will be above and beyond what he normally would cover in his workshop presentation, right?
It shouldn't be. We don't tell them how to run the
No, I'm not
department.
asking, I'm just asking
So-
if he's going to give a presentation, then that would be a separate presentation from presenting his budget, right?
No, I mean, the impact that we have on his budget would be the impact that you're saying this contract has on his budget?
Well, I mean, again, if he was prepared to come here and give an entire presentation on this
I
particular
didn't invite
subject.
the chief to come and make a presentation to us tonight.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I didn't. I asked him for the contract.
Well,
The
last
agreement that we had with
month,
Nelson.
Mike, didn't you say that he was coming
We
here?
went to, the government rolled, Lamont rolled us back to 1.
Bless you.
Restricted us to 10. I didn't even ask the chief to 10, but I told him I wanted a copy of the agreement they had. Because that's really what we were looking for. But from my understanding, that's what we were looking for, to know what the agreement was between the town and the ambulance transporter.
Mike, last month, didn't you say
Yeah,
that the
but
chief was coming
let me
here to
explain.
give
We
a
made a
presentation?
call because we're under a
Let's again.
10-person limit here.
Yeah, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah, no,
6, 7,
we're
8,
at 10.
9.
Yeah, no, we're at 10, we're at 10
But he
right
would have
now.
been the 11th and the
Yeah.
12th if Diane was here.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
No,
so
I'm
we-
just saying,
yes.
use the technology for this in the same way that we're going to do that for the workshop, that's all.
Well, all right, we didn't do it for tonight.
Because he said he
but
was
I
going to
don't-
give a presentation, and I thought that's what you had said last
My
month.
agenda,
So
though.
that's all.
I didn't.
Yeah,
call for
so, yeah, I understand, so.
Well, his workshop is what, in January or
Right.
February? January?
we had the
Yeah,
list on the
so
sheet,
it's not,
yeah.
it's not very far off.
January 16th.
So if he combines it all together,
And
it's
he's
fine with
the
me.
last one on a Saturday.
So.
Yeah,
So if you remember, one year, we were here for probably 4 hours with him.
yes. Well, there were some problems then. Yeah.
So,
But you want to hear what this does to the finances of what you talked about
Well,
earlier.
this in essence is sort of subcontracting what could have been done entirely in-house. We didn't have
Right.
to give out a contract. We actually could have taken over the PSA and taken over all the responsibilities that the PSA has written in it.
yeah, but why would we want to do that?
I know that. And so, but what I'm saying, what I'm asking for is,
I mean, I think you and I know the answers to these questions.
Well,
And-
some
and
of
I
the-
think
we
most
know some of the answers.
Board members should know the answer, that I don't believe the agreement with any ambulance company changes his manpower or staffing, because the ambulance company is doing the transports always. And that's what they're there for. The only way it positively
Right.
impacts us,
So a question is.
the way it positively impacts us is that we make a requirement that he has a paramedic on the unit, on one of the units, which then stops our unit from having to leave town if that person requires that level of care.
Okay, let's just
Which
say.
is what AMR was
Let's
kind of
just say
doing at
there's
the
still,
time.
there's still questions that, that would affect how much medical coverage his department has to give the town at any one time, especially when it's multiple calls.
When it's multiple calls, yeah, there is.
Simultaneous calls.
Yeah. They would be the next
I know.
one after.
Okay. All right.
I'm missing something. Michael, if you have specific questions, send me a specific question. I'll see if I can get an answer before the workshop.
Yeah, I don't see
No,
this as a,
It could all happen in the workshop.
yeah, I don't see it as a big issue.
I didn't either. I didn't
This
think
guy,
it was.
our chief's doing a tremendous job over there. He really is. He's going to come prepared to answer your questions in the budget presentation. And if your specific question is,
Right.
what does this impact have on his budget in terms of either revenue or expenses, Paul is very capable of answering
Right,
those
I'm
questions.
saying if he's before us in January, he doesn't have to come in December,
Right. Okay, so,
as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Anything else? Any board members have any questions, comments? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Please be safe, everyone, for Thanksgiving.
yeah, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Somebody
Happy
make a motion to
Thanksgiving.
adjourn. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.